customer asks the simplest question a support desk ever gets. Where's my order? The desk is the app answering these tickets, and it invents a shipping date because nobody gave it a way to look. So Daniel, the engineer who owns the desk, wires up a lookup and spends the afternoon on the function which works in his desk. Then the desk calls it with the customer's name where the order number goes, and on the next ticket it doesn't call it at all. So he does what everyone does next and adds a line to the instructions telling it to always check the order system. Nothing changes, same wrong argument, same skipped calls, and now a line that makes it look handled. Freeze, because it works when Daniel calls it and fails when Claude calls it, so the fault sits between those two calls. Here's how the exam asks it. An app gives Claude a lookup tool that works when called directly, and Claude calls it inconsistently with a wrong argument. What should the developer do? The item parks in the corner, and you'll answer it yourself by the end. Call it 2 more of the 53 questions you'll sit, and it opens the last of the 4 quarters, what actually runs. Here is the whole episode in one picture. A loop the desk goes round whenever it needs a fact it hasn't got. Daniel's tool card slides into the first step. You send your tools and the ticket. Claude asks for one. You run it. You send the result back. 3 of those 4 steps are your code. Claude never runs your function and never touches your database. Its only move is the second step, choosing a tool and filling in its arguments, and it plays that move from what you wrote. So hold on to this. You own 3 steps, Claude owns 1, and what goes wrong in the model's hands went wrong in something you wrote. The loop's only branch sits on Claude's step in the field on screen called the stop reason, which an option list prints rather than describes. Tool use means it wants a tool, and what comes back is a tool use block carrying the tool's name and an input field with the arguments. End turn means it's finished and you have your answer. Don't code a 2-value world though. The other stop reasons on screen, like running out of room, leave the loop too. The exam guide calls this the agentic harness, and a while loop around one request is all it is. Stay on the 3rd step, because whose computer runs the code splits tools into 3 buckets, and that's what a stem turns on. Tools you define run on yours, and so do Anthropic's own definitions for common jobs, printed as bash and text editor. Both are client tools. Prefer one of Anthropic's to your own equivalent because the model trained on those exact signatures and calls them more reliably. Server tools are the 3rd bucket, like the web search, which runs on Anthropic's side, so the result arrives in the same reply and you build no result block. Back to the first step and to the question that changes how you build these. What actually crosses from your step into Claude's, not your function and not Daniel's afternoon of work on it. 3 fields cross, the 3 on screen, the name, the description, and the input schema, which is the shape of the arguments. Of those 3, the description is the only one you write in sentences, so it carries what a name and a shape can't say. The docs are unusually blunt about it. A detailed description is by far the most important factor in tool performance. So stop writing it as documentation for the next engineer. It's the interface, and step 2 has nothing else to read about what it's for. Which reframes Daniel's afternoon. A perfect function and a forward description. So the field that mattered said almost nothing. A good one covers 4 things, and the docs ask for at least 3 or 4 sentences, more than anyone writes by instinct. What the tool does, when to use it, and when not to, what each parameter means in plain words, and what it can't do. The when to use half tells the model an order question is this tool's job, and without it you get Daniel's skipped calls. The when not to half runs the other way, stopping a tool firing on every ticket regardless. Drop one field to the input schema, and Daniel's wrong argument is the same bug in different clothes. He named a parameter and never said what it was, so the model guessed a customer's name, identifies an order, and nothing said otherwise. 2 switches sit beside those fields, and neither one writes your description for you. Strict true printed there forces the arguments into the shape you define, and it's the answer when a stem says inputs must conform. Tool choice set on the request forces the call itself, So it's the answer when a stem says a tool must run every time. Both guarantee mechanics, neither tells the model what your tool is for or which ticket it belongs on. Pull the zoom back out to the whole set in that first step because the exam asks about the set as much as one tool. The instinct is one tool per action. The guidance is the opposite. Fewer, bigger tools with the operations behind one parameter, the docs call action. Choosing between 8 near identical names makes more mistakes than choosing an action on one clear tool. Once a tool is that big, its name has to say which system it belongs to, which is namespacing. The lookup becomes orders get order, the system in front of the verb, because the return system is next door and a bare name fits both. One decision in that set reaches round to the fourth step, and it's what your tool hands back. Returning the whole record because choosing his work feels harmless and it's episode 8's window stuffing problem again. Return the fields that answer the question. Status, date, item, and stop. That arc lands you on the fourth step, which has rules, and breaking one gets the request rejected rather than answered badly. The result goes back as a tool result block printed there in the very next user message straight after the request it answers and before any text. Its tool use ID pairs it with that request, and a call that works alone but comes back rejected is usually disordering. When the tool fails, you don't crash and you don't hide it. The failure goes back flagged with the is error field, and Claude works with it. The wording matters because the model reads it the way it reads everything else. The doc's advice is to say what went wrong and what to try next instead of an error that just says failed. When it asks for two things at once, the fourth step still happens once, and every request gets a result in the same message. Split them into separate messages and you lose the parallel calls because the history you send is the pattern it copies. The gate on the arrow from Claude's step into yours is where you decide which tools run unattended. A lookup can just go, a refund asks a person first, and that's an approval pattern, your loops call and not the models. Back to the inconsistent lookup at full size. Option 1. Set strict true on the tool so its inputs are guaranteed to match your schema. Option 2. Expand the tool's description to say when it applies and what each argument means. Option 3. Add a line to the system prompt telling the model to always check the order system. Option 4. Lower the temperature on the request so the model behaves more predictably. Name the decision. This is what runs the tool as a thing the model chooses and calls. Then read the giveaway. The tool works when called directly, so the running of it is fine and the fault is what it was told. Option 3 dies twice and you watched it die. Daniel added exactly that line and nothing changed. Put it on the picture and it sits outside the loop. A general instruction far from the tool that has a field for this. And forcing the call is what tool choice is for, which still wouldn't fix a wrong argument. Option 1 is the good distractor because it points a real mechanism at a real sounding symptom. Strict sits on the first step with the definition, guaranteeing the arguments arrive in the shape you defined. It can't tell the model that an order is identified by a number and not a name, and it says nothing about whether the tool is called. That's the fact from the middle of this episode. Shape and meaning are different problems, and this one only touches shape. The temperature dies on rule 1, the archetypal generic knob, and it touches no step of the loop you own. Inconsistent is a variability-shaped word, so the eye goes to the sampling dial when the cause was a thin description. What survives is the description, the one field of the 3 that says what a tool is for and which ticket it belongs on. That's the pattern for tool items. When a tool works alone and fails in the model's hands, the fix is in what you told the model. Here is the missing order in one sentence. You own 3 steps of that loop, Claude owns 1, and it plays its step from what you wrote. Claude never runs your code, and which of the 3 buckets a tool sits in decides what your app owes it. The branch is on the stop reason, where tool use goes round again and end turn is your answer. Step 1 hands over a name, a description, and an input schema, and strict true forces the shape, never the meaning. A description says what the tool does, when it applies, when not to, what each parameter means, and what it can't do. Build fewer and more capable tools, prefix them with their system, and return the fields that answer the question. Step 4 goes back in the next user message before any text. Failures come back flagged, and a consequential tool asks first. The counter moves to 38 of 53, and the what runs quarter has its first piece. Tomorrow, the returns team asks for the same lookup in their app, and copying the code into a second place is how this stops working.